Welcome to the Call of the Farms podcast. This is a rallying cry to embrace the land, cultivate self-sufficiency, and sow the seeds for sustainability. Hi, I'm Tim E., and I'm your host today, and I'm joined with my lovely wife, Sophie.
Hi, everyone.
This episode is brought to you today by Joy and Jolie. Go to joyandjolie.com to check out awesome salves and get your hands on some bum mix. That's joyandjolie.com and use the code GOODSOIL and get 10% off.
JOYANDJOLIE.com.
All right, guys. So today is episode 25, and we're going to go over emergency readiness because what just happened a couple of weeks ago?
We were in an Arctic freeze.
We were
over most of the United States.
You know, we moved here over a year ago, and last winter, they said it was the coldest winter, but I think this winter was the coldest one. I think we were fooled when we came here.
It was a prolonged cold. Yeah, that's true.
And being from California, that it was extremely cold. And I'm not saying like 60 degrees. It was in the single digits.
Single digits. We had 0, and it was with wind chill and the -8, which, yeah, it's pretty cold for us Californians.
And I thought we ruled out South Dakota and Montana.
Yeah.
So but you know what? We had things in place and we were ready because we were ready for any kind of emergency. And that's what we're going to go over today. In fact, we're going to be going over a lot of things today. And first thing we're going to talk about is risk assessment. And that's something that we do when I walk the land with a lot of my clients. We take a look to see what are the possible risks that could be involved with this land in terms of security risks or natural disaster risks. And thinking about our land back in California, we had to deal with some natural risk, and that was natural disaster, which was fire. Right? And lack of water.
Lots of heat, the water.
Mm-hmm. And living out here, we thought the risk would be, well, we tried to mitigate the risk on tornadoes because we thought the mountains would break it up, being in East Tennessee.
Yeah, for the most part, it does.
Mm-hmm. So we definitely did a risk assessment of our own property before we purchased it. And that's something that I like to do with a lot of my clients too. There is no such thing as a 0% risk, but we want to be able to mitigate risk as much as possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can talk a lot about redundancy because that's all I heard when we were in California was in the Army. We have a lot of contingency plans and redundancy.
We are definitely going to get to all of that.
So fun.
Well, we are going to be talking about that. So let's talk about like emergency response plans. And that's something where I remember back in school, they talked about like earthquake drills and earthquake responses and didn't really take that all seriously.
Duck and roll.
Duck and cover.
Tuck and cover.
Maybe you're rolling an earthquake, but I'm duck and covering.
Duck and cover, that's what it was.
As if a desk was going to save me from the ceiling falling in, caving it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think of duck and goose at this point.
You know, a funny story is that when I was in Iraq and we actually got shelled by rockets and I heard the screaming sounds of mortar, that's a sound that I'll never forget. It's like that whistling sound. Kind of like that. You remember like that Nerf football back in the day when they had that little whistle when you threw it? It sounded kind of like that. But my instinctually, I ran and I ducked and covered. I don't know why, as if being underneath something was going to save me from like a mortar round.
Kind of like underneath a cot or something ridiculous.
I did. I don't know why. I was underneath a cot in a tent, as if that was going to save me.
Well, there's no safe place. I remember you told me.
Yeah.
Or you run outside, or you be inside. But I think someone told you at that time. It was like a colonel that told you just to lie flat, straight on the ground.
I think he did say that.
Yeah.
Just lie, as if that would say. Well, definitely don't want to just be running around. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I just think those are things you can't really do much preparation for.
You can't.
I
think I digressed there. But in terms of emergency response plans for your homestead, we just talked a little bit about Tennessee, where being prepared for tornadoes or any sort of natural disaster, like or a fire, right, in California, you have to kind of go through the same steps in terms of you want to make sure you have food, you want to make sure you have power, and especially during our snowstorm, you want to make sure you have warmth.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, while we were freezing here, we luckily didn't lose power. There were some people in our county that did, and throughout the state that did. In fact, there was, in Middle Tennessee, there was a county where the water company sent a message out that said that they were running low on water because this last Arctic freeze was cold, but it was cold for an extended amount of time, longer than what Tennessee is typically prepared for. And for us, we couldn't even get out of our home or our land, really. And right outside where we would see cars drive through, there's a hill. And I was sitting here, had a meeting, and there was a car that I watched slide down, and then was looking the headlights of the car. But we had a parking lot outside.
We did. That would be a pretty scary backwards roller coaster ride. But
yeah, they were pretty distraught.
Yeah. We were more prepared out here in Tennessee because of the homestead that we started in California, because I remember in California when we had some of these issues that came up when PG&E had brownouts and whatnot. I remember making a run to the local 7-Eleven for bags of ice.
Yeah.
Remember that? And yes, we were one of those that went and stocked up on toilet paper at Costco.
Yes.
But this time around, we were way more prepared. We had bottles of water ready. We had cut wood for our wood stove.
Yeah, the only thing that I had to run out to prep for, because you were out for the week, conveniently, for the last 2 years, you have not been around physically.
Good timing.
To help out with any of the preparations around the homestead. So it has been me. But this last time, one of the things that I had to do to prepare was to go to our local feed store and stock up on extra chicken feed and alfalfa, dog food, all the things that, just to make sure the animals were still going to be okay. We had friends that came over in our community that helped bring extra hay, dropped off like a round bale of hay, as well as bags and bags of pine shavings for the chickens to keep them warm. And we had our friend help us because I couldn't find the staple gun, but to just reinforce the outside of our chicken coop, what I had left up from last year, what I put up together last year, it was falling apart. And we, for the most part, haven't needed it up, but before something like this, it was good to have reinforced. And
you brought up a good point, because emergency preparedness doesn't happen overnight. We have to have things prepared beforehand, but sometimes when it hits, you may have to go back out to the store and get some feed. And just like what Sophie just mentioned, the beauty of being in good community and establishing those relationships beforehand, not when disaster strikes, okay? Not when you buy that bug out land and then flee to it when you need to, but you have to actually establish these critical relationships beforehand, and we help one another out. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, instead of Costco running out of toilet paper the way that we had experienced a couple of years ago in California, this time I think I went to Tractor Supply just because our local co-op was already closed. But I went to Tractor Supply and people were grabbing straw bales. There were no straw bales. And then everybody was grabbing pine shavings by the bag. And I was thinking, okay, we're in a completely different area now.
You need toilet paper.
It's not toilet paper. It's toilet paper for the chickens.
Yeah. But we brought up this point that you may have to go out and buy bags of feed, or, buy these pine shavings, things. So you have to also set aside some funds for a rainy day, such as that. And Sophie just talked about livestock, animal welfare. That's a huge thing, because last winter we lost our cow. We lost a Jersey cow from pneumonia. and that was devastating. This time around, we wanted to make sure that we did everything we can to make sure that our animals were well fed, that they were warmer, and that they actually had water. In fact, Sophie, you led the charge there and brought 5-gallon buckets of water, 5 gallons buckets of water out, and that's hardcore. I remember doing that in the military. That was actually like some PT drills that
Yeah.
they had to carry.
No, again, it's
water.
like anticipation and realizing what were the pitfalls last year.
Yeah.
One of the things I absolutely hated was chiseling out frozen blocks of water in the trough for the chickens and the cows.
Yeah.
So this year what I got was just these. Tractor Supply had 2 buckets for $10, so they were still $5, which is expensive.
Yeah.
I think you can get them cheaper. There was $3.50 at Harbor Freight from what our friend was telling us. But in any case, I grabbed 4 of these, and I figured, if we have water, last year we didn't have the freeze inside the home. Thank goodness for that. So I figured, well, we just use our bathtub and fill up the water. And ironically, that's what I grew up with when I was a child. My grandfather always had buckets of water in the bathtub. And then my mom would have buckets of water in the bathtub. And I just kept thinking how silly it was. My grandfather actually used the buckets to flush the toilet. And I used to think, why couldn't you just get the handle and flush the toilet?
Yeah.
But now
we have buckets of
that's what I'm saying. We had buckets of water. We should probably just keep buckets of water just in case. And now I'm turning it to my mom. But that's what I grew up with. And as I was filling up these 5-gallon buckets of water, I kept thinking about Grandpa and Grandma and Mom, and how that's how I grew up with. They just warned me to have these buckets of water in place. But because of that, we got into a really good routine where I would take that out and we would just leave it in the house. I would fill it up with cold water, and by the time we needed to use it and bring it outside, it was room temperature water. And it was just nice to have set aside. That way, we didn't need it to be hot water to bring outside. And it would take too long too. And that's one of the things, like, you don't want to be out there. Like when you're out there and it's single digits or 0 degrees, I just don't want to be out there any longer than I have to be. So then I took out those 5-gallon buckets and put them into our gorilla cart, which was great, and just dragged that through the sludgy snow the first day. And we got, I think, 8 inches of snow. Yeah, but we just have to do it. And it was pretty well insulated inside the chicken coop. And we checked it often enough with the cows, because we would go out 3 times a day. And every time we went, I would just take out 1 bucket. I got a little bit smarter, where then I would just take 1 bucket of water if we just went out more often than having to bring out 4 buckets of water and just doing it once or twice a day.
Great. And I tried to get ahead of it. I bought one of those warmers to put in the trough, but then it kept shorting out. So even if it's a trial and error where you can do the best that you can to try to prepare for these things, but when all else fails, you may have to go back to the tried and true method, going mechanical. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just one of the things that I knew I could handle if you weren't around. And, just realizing that sometimes we just get better year after year, and we're learning. This is definitely not California, but California had its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
Even though we didn't have cold weather, we would have too hot, too much heat in the summertime, or too much smoke. So it then became really difficult to go out there, and you didn't want to be, because the air quality was so bad.
I remember that. Yeah.
That, we really didn't want to. And that was really rough too. So there's no real easier place to live or to farm. It's just, you have to deal with the elements.
You have different challenges. That's a great point that you brought up. So no matter where you live, you need to find out what those challenges, those emergencies can possibly be, and just learn to adapt. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
When you're homesteading, you just have to make do with what you have most of the time. And that's, and you learn to be resilient. You learn to be flexible. You learn to adapt. And that's a really good thing.
Yeah. And what was nice was, going into it, I made sure that the children knew that we were going to have a good time. So, it was good. Even though we were trudging through the snow, we were laughing, and we got to do a snowball fight. I got hit in the face, but I try not to get upset. But just playing with them, and those in those moments are the moments that, even though they're really tough, I try to always remind myself that those are the moments where your character is developed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Discipline is developed in these times. And if you make it horrible for the children, they're not ever going to want to get into farming, or they're really never going to they're not going to have good memories. But here we were, we made a snowman, we got into snowball fights, which we didn't have in California. And it made doing the chores together that much more enjoyable, even though it was tough. It was tough. Your hands are cold. Your face is cold. It gets so cold, it gets hot.
Yeah, I love that point that you made. Attitude is everything. And it's not fun when you're going out there in that kind of weather. I know homesteading looks glamorous sometimes when you're watching on YouTube, but when it gets right down to it, it's just like the military. You're going to be able to wake up early, or you're going to go dark 30 and in the freezing cold, because animals depend on you for their food and water. But I love the fact that you made it a game. And so it's something positive for our children to be able to remember, and something that they fondly talk about. They still talk about the snowman out there. And even when I was doing chores, I had the little one throw snowballs at me, and it was pretty fun.
It was fun. Yeah. And not to also mention that during this time, I had planted our first garlic heads last October. So they're about, I'd say, 6 inches out of the ground right now. And one of the things that I did before the cold weather, the snow was coming down, is I just made sure I put down a frost blanket and then put a little bit of weight on it. So in case it gets windy, because it does get windy here where we're at, that they wouldn't be flying around before the snowstorm came in. So there was a huge blanket of snow on top of the garlic. I was really praying that they survived.
Yeah.
But it almost acted as an insulation for the garlic. And same thing with the chickens. The way that the snow fell and how it fell, it just felt like everything was insulated because of the 8 inches of snow that we had.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're applying what we're learning, and we're blessed to be able to share it with you so you can learn and not have to make any mistakes we made.
Yeah. Well, we learned a lot from last year.
Yeah.
It was tough last year, and it really just made us question if we were really cut out for it in this type of climate. But we learned a lot, and we anticipated this time. We knew what we were going into, because last year, I remember people were telling us that, okay, you guys, it's going to drop into the single digits, if not negative, with wind chill. And I kept sitting on it thinking, well, it's 50 degrees out. I don't really think that it is. I just somehow, even though all these warnings were happening, there's a part of me that still felt like, well, it should be okay. Like, how does the weather go from 50 to negative 10? But it can. Yeah. And I didn't prepare for that, the chicken coop, until that night before. And I said, well, let's just in case, at least the chickens will be okay.
Right.
And I'm glad we did. We didn't lose any chickens last year. We didn't lose any hens. We didn't lose any animals this year. We lost a cow last year. But I think in retrospect, it was really only because we brought on, she was a new dairy cow, Phoebe, that we just had brought on a month of, like, 3 weeks prior.
Yes.
So she had a weaker immune system. And then, of course, like with the deep freeze, I think she was affected by it, because we had our other dairy cows here too as well, and our sheep and goats and beef cattle.
Yeah, those are some really great points. We're constantly learning, and when things are coming at you, you just need to be resilient, and it does help when you're prepared. And there are a lot of things we can do to prepare ourselves: having enough feed, having water, having a lot of these materials on hand ready to go in case the temperature freezes overnight. And we have the ability to use, we've used some technology. We have apps, obviously, to track the weather. And in our area, the weather can vary just like within a mile of one another. It could be rainy on one side and sunny on the other. But by having the weather app and also being community, we'll have groups on Telegram and Signal. Like, we're keeping everyone, each other informed so that we can be prepared for when things hit the fan.
And with this Arctic freeze I did not have to go to the grocery store even to prepare.
That's
the
right.
only thing I had to do was go to Tractor Supply, which I really feel about Tractor Supply. That was the only thing that was available for me at the time.
Yeah.
And we had a local feed store a couple of days later deliver and restock us with alfalfa. I thought that was phenomenal. So I tipped our friend for that because the roads were really slick at that time. But in any case, going back to what I was saying, was that this was the first year where we didn't have to go to the grocery store that we had to in California. Like when this kind of when these elements hit California, I remember before we were very reactive.
We were, yeah.
Meaning we would all run to the grocery store. We would panic and text everybody in our community, like, go make sure you grab this. There was only a few of this left when I went. And, here we are. Everyone's going to the grocery store and food's not on the shelves. They're just flying off the shelves. Toilet paper, just all sorts of things that I'm so grateful that we had those events that happened in 2020.
We did.
To where we are today in 2024. It took us 4 years later to get to the point where, if things happen, we're going to be okay. We have wood for our wood stove.
Right.
If we lose electricity, I mean, the nice thing was when things were cold outside, I didn't have to put much of my food away in the fridge. I just stuck it outside because it was colder outside.
Yeah, I remember that. I also want to talk about is communication. That's extremely important. We've established a protocol where we have walkie-talkies that we use. And that's something that is good practice if you're on the farmland. Sometimes you don't have cell reception, and having walkie-talkies is a quick and easy way to be able to communicate with one another. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's also radios that we can communicate with people in our community, which is also really important when we're in a down situation.
Yep.
And so it's just nice to be able to have that. And there are a lot of people in our community that can come in a matter of minutes. In fact, we had our neighbor come down with his Kubota.
That's right. He did.
And he lives up the mountain from us, just a couple of minutes, really.
Sure.
He lives about a mile away, but he came down with his oldest son and had these amazing tires on the Kubota. If we can find one at an auction, I highly recommend that we hopefully find one on a good deal, or if anybody else here has one, let us know if you're looking to sell yours. But it was nice because all these cars that were slipping and sliding
on the side
on the road, literally there was a truck that had fallen over on its side off of the cliff.
That's scary.
That to see him just come over and check in on us and actually brought us up so we could worship together and
it was cool.
Spend some time together as families and warm up with hot cocoa and a board game.
It was really fun. The Kubota was going so slow, it was like crawling at like 5 miles an hour, but it worked and we made it back safely.
Yeah.
So communication and having good community, that's really key. But also having emergency supplies on hand, like water, of course, frozen foods, beef, lamb, having your preserved foods, actually, like canned food, freeze-dried food. So before getting into the wintertime frame, busy preserving the foods for such a time as this. And also having cool weather gear. So best way is actually, in the summertime, they'll have winter weather, cool weather gear on sale. And that's the best time to stock up.
Yeah. And I love Costco gear too. They have some snow pants that I really love.
They do. Yeah.
And on top of that, they're men's wool socks. I have no shame. I love them. They're really good at Costco. However you feel about Costco as well.
And the most important thing, once you're done with, quote unquote, emergency, like our Snowmageddon, being able to replenish those materials, that's key. So replenish the food, the feed, the hay. I know we had to stock up on feed and dog food. I know we feed raw, but we also supplement with some
Yeah.
raw kibble,
Raw kibble.
natural kibble.
Yeah. It's just, I think the most important thing this year for us was just making sure that the animals were dry. They were kept dry, that they were kept warm, that had enough water, enough feed.
Yeah.
And this year was unique because we still had 2 puppies left.
That's right. We did.
And because of those 2 puppies, I was trying to find straw. Everyone was saying not to get hay because it would soak in the wet water and then freeze, so they would get cold, but to use straw bale. And even then it was all sold out. So we ended up using, I ended up getting pine shavings.
Yeah.
For both the puppies and the chickens. And one of the nice things is having just chicken in stock.
Yeah.
And having that be completely easy for me to make chicken broth and pho, specifically bone broth, where, it would warm up the house. So we didn't have to run the heater all the time. We had the stove going and the house smelled great. It was nice and warm and toasty. We had broth that we were sipping on, but pho to be able to eat. And we stretched it. We stretched our chicken for a couple of meals in the pho. And it was super simple.
It's nourishing. And what more would you crave on a cold wintry day aside from hot chocolate, but a warm bowl of pho?
Yeah.
And you have a pho masterclass that just got released.
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah. Well, where can we find this?
Yeah, you can go to sprinklewithsoil.com/pho, PHO. And I had recorded this pho masterclass, the chicken pho masterclass, a couple of months ago. Yep. And because of the book launch, things have just been delayed here and there. And so I've just launched it a couple of days ago.
Yep.
And I'm really excited about it. Sales have been good, and people have been, in the last couple of months, they've been asking, how do I make the chicken pho? It's so good. It's so simple. It's the most economical way to eat and cook, most nourishing that you can provide for your family.
Yeah.
And then we also have our Joy and Jolie spice mixes that our children make and pre-make so that we can use them. We use our own products. I use my own cookbook. I have no shame in it.
We do. It's super simple. You just get the Joy and Jolie pho mix bag, and then you just grab that pho masterclass. It's super simple to follow. If I can do it, you can do it. I sound like Yan Can there. Like,
yeah,
Yan Can, you can too.
Can you?
Yeah. But I remember growing up and just thinking, oh, it's easy to make instant cup of noodles, and now learning how damaging that was to my body. Now you can have nourishing soup, and it's so simple. All you gotta do is grab that pho mix bag and get your copy of the pho masterclass online.
Yeah.
And just watch it over and over again. It's super simple to follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I everything that I've done in my career, and especially in the kitchen, is optimization. How do I optimize for the most amount of nutrient density for my family without using a lot of ingredients, without it costing us an arm and a leg, but we still want the highest quality ingredients for the highest quality return on nutrients. And that's just, the number one greatest hack for me is having the pho spice mix, having a whole broiler chicken with some water, ginger, and onions, and getting started like that. Actually, the best hack is handing it off to you.
Yeah.
So you can do it now.
There we go, talking about redundancy there. So you need to make sure you have 2 cooks at home at least, right? So you can feed yourselves. But we hope you learned something here, where we're just talking about how you can be more resilient in a state of emergency. You're going to get this on the news. People are going to be freaking out when, wintry weather's coming, the blizzard, or fires may be coming in your area. And as long as you have food, as long as you've prepared beforehand, you have a power source, you have water, you have food, and most importantly, why we moved to Tennessee, you have community. You've got those boxes checked, then you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's just building those redundancy systems. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you guys joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it out to your friends and family. We'd be so honored. Be sure to check us out. If you're looking to build your own homestead, you can go to homesteadingrealtor.com and reach out to me. And also, if you're interested in finding out like financial options to purchase that homestead, you can check out freedomfundings.com and reach out to Sophie. We're just blessed for you guys to join us. Check us out also on sprinklewithsoil.com. Sign up for our newsletter. We're always putting out the latest and greatest on recipes, as well as ways you can help bolster your homestead, as well as how to find the right homestead. And we look forward to talking with you real soon.
Yep. Subscribe to our podcast.
Call the Farms.
Thanks, everyone.